I know that I made a donation to the Jericho Project to help the homeless, veterans, and families in need. You saw me do that live with you. I also had mentioned about the attack, a American, Joseph Newmeyer, who had tried to firebomb the U.S. Embassy in Israel. And I think we were talking a little bit about what was going on with some of the protests in Portland and other parts of America, where the left, the far left, are pretty actively trying to convince you to support BLM, Antifa, their ideas. The same people who had the Summer of Love created riots across this entire nation, threatened people merely because they exist. And that's kind of what we saw happening and what we saw with the individual allegedly arrested for trying to firebomb the U.S. Embassy. Again, you don't have the same feeling that he does. He supports Hamas, a terrorist organization. Whether you agree or disagree with Hamas, that's up to you. Whether you agree with Israel in total or in part is up to you. I'm not making that choice for you. But individuals like the protesters in Portland, like the members of the Democratic Socialists of America, individuals of the left, they have made the decision for you. They decided that you don't know enough. You just don't understand. And so they will make the decision for you. And they will use violence to cement that you will do what they say, that they will force you to comply, to be obedient to their feelings. And that's dangerous. That is authoritarian. And that is something we see on the left. There is no equivalent on the right. The right doesn't do this. As much as the left wants you to believe that, as much as they're using Hollywood and TV shows, as they try and use the news media to try and say, yes, it's the right. It's MAGA that's the problem. It's Republicans and Trump. They're the problem. But it's the left that's burning down buildings. It's the left that are invading colleges and threatening their fellow students. It's the left that are having 120-day riots in Portland. It is the left that is trying to firebomb our embassies. That's not on the right. That should tell you something. And that kind of brings up what's going on right now. And I'll get to Andrew Cuomo in a minute, but it kind of goes to what we're seeing with the Israeli embassy, the D.C. shooting that just happened this week on the 22nd, I believe it was, where we had 2 Israeli staff members were shot dead. 2. And there's from a man who's saying, hey, he wants to go with the whole free Palestine. He is a pro-Hamas supporter. He supports the terrorism of the Hamas terrorist organization, supports Hezbollah and Houthis, and he decided to kill people because of it, because you didn't share his feeling. Because he has a feeling, and his feeling is more important than whatever decision you make, whether you agree with Israel in part or in whole. Whether you agree with the terrorists or not, doesn't matter. You aren't doing what he says, what he believes. And he has been taught and trained and indoctrinated by our colleges and our schools and the news media and Hollywood that he's on the right side of history. So it's okay to use violence against you and anyone else that he deems an enemy to his message. Now, this individual, Mr. Elijah, his name is Elias Rodriguez, is a dangerous, deranged maniac. And I say that about anyone. I say that also equally about Joseph Newmeyer. If they have committed these crimes, they are deranged, dangerous individuals. They are dangerous to society. And rather than say, well, it's because Israel, no. Just because someone else does something that you may think is wrong, that might actually be wrong or might not, does not give you the right to try and kill people, to harm people. You don't get that right just because you don't agree with them. That's just not the way it works. And not if you have a society, not if you have a nation. You can't do that. That's the Wild West. That's anarchy. That is might makes right. And while that worked in the Middle Ages, we would like to believe that we are in an enlightened age and we know better than just simply might makes right. And if I'm willing to use violence against you, you will submit. At least that's what we would like to believe about the society. And there are plenty of people out there like Sabby Sabs, like the Party for Socialism and Liberation. The PSL is where they indoctrinated and where they cultivated individuals like Elias Rodriguez, the shooter or the presumed shooter over at the DC embassy. The man who killed 2 people in cold blood simply because he didn't like them. He didn't like their political ideology. In fact, it wasn't even those individuals. He didn't like the government. That's crazy. You don't like the government, so you're just going to kill citizens of that country? That is insane. Just like it's insane for Joseph Neumeier to try and firebomb the U.S. Embassy in Israel because he doesn't like Donald Trump, because he doesn't like the United States. You know, you can vote. You could vote in whatever candidate you want. There's plenty of progressive candidates who want to be in there. And they all, the Democratic Socialists of America, have come out clearly and said they want to get rid of the Constitution. They want to rewrite our government. Vote for them if you think that's the way that America should be run. If you believe in socialism, then go ahead and vote for those fanatics. But instead, those fanatics create a culture and environment where violent radicals come out and try to harm us. That's where the Summer of Love came from BLM, from Antifa, from the socialists, who all believe that they have to destroy America. They have to punish you with violence to make you obey their feelings. And you may ask the question, why are their feelings more important than your rights, your life? They're not. They're absolutely not, but they don't care because that's their worldview, and they are right. And of course, you're wrong. They're on the right side of history, and you just don't matter. You have to just obey. And the left, because they are sold on this idea, are frantically trying to find a way to excuse the violence that they do. You saw that with BLM. It was Jerry Nadler, Representative Jerry Nadler, remember in 2020 and 2021, he denied repeatedly that Antifa even exists. Mind you, there is video. He said that right after there was a American citizen that was shot dead in the street by a self-avowed Antifa member simply because he was wearing a Donald Trump hat. And they killed him. And Jerry Nadler said it didn't exist, wasn't real. Well, the guy who got arrested, he admitted he was a member of Antifa. He admitted that he did the crime. There's video of him doing it. And he point blank said, yeah, I'm a member of Antifa. They're members of Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow. They've been out on the protests. I've covered them many, many times. I've been threatened by them many, many times. They exist. Jerry Nadler said, no, they don't exist. I don't want to talk about that. You hear that from Bernie Sanders. Don't want to talk about that. AOC avoids the subject altogether, or they try to justify it. And sadly, this is Sabby Sabs. Some people may be familiar with her. She is a left-leaning political commentator, very much like me, except she's on the left, and she's a progressive. I think that's a fair statement to say she's a progressive. She's further on the left than just Democrat. And she supports this ideology overall. She supports this movement. She supports Hamas. She calls it pro-Palestine, and you hear that all the time. That's the nice way of saying it. I support Palestine. What's the government of Palestine, by the way? Oh, it's Hamas. And what did Hamas put in writing and have said consistently? They want to genocide another group of people because they have a different belief. Yeah, that's called terrorists. That's terrorism, and that is antithetical to peace. So yeah, you support Palestine, then you support Hamas, their government, which is a terrorist organization. you support terrorism. It's that simple. It is that direct and that simple. Now, I'm not saying that Sabby Sabs is a bad person. Please don't. I don't know her directly. I think I've been at a couple of events covering the same event as her. I believe on RFK or a couple of different events here in New York. I'm not saying that she's a bad person. She knows people that I know that consider her to be a nice person. Fine. But that doesn't mean that her politics are good. And her politics deserve critique. And in this case, she deserves critique. Because her coverage of who is Elias Rodriguez, she has questions. And in this, she came across something that I found very interesting. Because she's trying to justify why Elias Rodriguez committed murder. Cold-blooded murder. And she's trying to say, well, it's because of Israel and what Israel is doing. That has nothing to do with someone saying they're going to commit murder. You don't like that government, then convince the United States government not to fund Israel, not to fund anything happening in the Middle East. That's the answer. Murder? That's not the answer. Murder of two low-level, not even politicians, two low-level functionaries. Yeah, they're embassy members, but they're low-level individuals. No policy changes because of what they were going to do. Although policy may well change now because of what the killer did. But it's organizations like the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the PSL, that helps to fund and organize Antifa and BLM and other radical organizations like the Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, Indivisible New York, and many others, that they get trained and taught and groomed and cultivated in this atmosphere, this bubble of far leftist activist violence that creates these individuals who go and try and firebomb an embassy or go out and murder individuals for no reason, no justifiable reason. There is none. But I wanted you to hear this section from Sabby Sabs. I want you to hear this. And again, the link will be in the description after the show, so you can see the entire segment that she does, and you can see her reasoning, her logic, the evidence that she provides. I'm telling you up front that this isn't in complete context because it's not the full video, but she's talking about this individual, Elias Rodriguez, and his connection to this organization, the Party for Socialism and Liberation. And I want you to hear what she says here. I think it's important.
One of the local chapters, but according to PSL, he is no longer a member of that organization. Apparently, he was just a member in 2017. They put out a statement here. We reject any attempt to associate PSL with the DC shooting. Elias Rodriguez is not a member of the PSL.
He's not a member of the PSL now. He was a member in 2017. And very likely, he was a member. We have no way of confirming this. He may well have been a member all the way up until the moment he got caught killing people. But even if he isn't, and he may not be a member, has not been a member maybe for 7 years, as they claim, maybe, fantastic. What was he taught when he was there? What was he trained? What was he motivated to do? What did their culture in that organization, which is responsible for training and cultivating Antifa and BLM and many of the far left protests we see across this nation right now to support Hamas, what were they putting in his head? What indoctrination did they provide? They don't mention any of that. So just because he hasn't been there for the last 7 years doesn't mean you didn't program him and this was just festering, looking for an opportunity. That's something that Sabby doesn't address, that the mainstream media isn't necessarily addressing. And I think it's important. Just because you're not there today doesn't mean you didn't get the programming. I'll give you a real life example on myself. It's anecdotal, but here we go. You know what? I still remember my training from the Marine Corps. They put that into my head and it stuck. I still can quote chapter and verse on many things. Like the mission of the Marine Corps is to seek out and destroy the enemy through superior fire and maneuver. That's a very simple, quick little blurb, but that comes straight out of the Marine Corps manual. And that was back 35 years ago that they put that into my head. Yeah, your programming stays for a long time. And yes, you have to be programmed to a certain extent when you join the military, because no sane person would run towards a machine gun shooting directly at them. Yes, there is some programming to be in the military. That's true. Because normal human beings don't rush into the direct fire of death without some amount of programming. That's true. And so, yeah, that sticks with me. And that's 35 years ago. Longer than Sabby's been alive. Longer than many of these activists have been alive. So to tell me that, oh, you haven't been with that organization, that radical organization, for the last 7 years, well, then there's nothing. You don't remember anything. It's like it never happened. That's a lie. That is a lie. And that is a false equivalence. That doesn't excuse them of anything. What did you train him? What did you teach him? What was your bubble like when he was there in 2017? I have no reason to believe there's any difference between their anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, pro-terrorism outlook as a socialist organization then versus now. I have no doubt they're the same people, same organization with the same messaging. But let's go on.
He had a brief association with one branch of the PSL that ended in 2017. We know of no contact with him in over 7 years. We have nothing to do.
They know of, which doesn't mean he didn't have contact, but the people who are reporting right now, supposedly and presumably the leadership of the PSL at this moment, are saying they didn't have. But that doesn't mean the organization didn't have any contact with him, that members didn't have any contact with him. And again, it doesn't change what did they indoctrinate in him beforehand. Let's go on.
Do with the shooting and do not support it. In the comments, PSL is really getting destroyed.
Because they support terrorism. Because they support the destruction of America. To put in their choices. They want to put in and supplant everything that is with their ideology. Because they are on the right side of history. At least in their own mind. So yeah, I'm not surprised.
In the comments. So just FYI. But this was the other part to me that was suspicious.
So there's something suspicious. And when she says that, she says it's suspicious that Elias Rodriguez is the one who did this, that he's been identified. She has a problem. She thinks something's wrong about Elias. Something doesn't make sense about him individually. Not the organization he was connected to, that he possibly was indoctrinated by, not the ideology of the PSL. No, she has no problems with that. She's perfectly fine with pro-Hamas support of terrorism and genocide. She's all right with that as long as it's the right political target, apparently. But she does have a problem with Elias. What could that problem be, you might wonder?
So he just happened to have been at one point associated with PSL.
Yes, that's a fact. The organization itself confirms he was at some level, in some manner, he's associated with them. Yes, that's not a question. That's a fact. Go on.
Why is that significant?
Because he may have been indoctrinated. Because of what they're cultivating in that organization. Were they reinforcing his desire to kill random human beings? And to be able to justify it by saying that he agrees with a terrorist ideology? That's why it could be significant. And how many others, how many hundreds, if not thousands of others, got the same indoctrination, have the same mindset as Elias Rodriguez, but lack the opportunity or perhaps the will to commit the same kind of atrocity?
PSL, along with Answer Coalition, they are the organizations that organizes these massive pro-Palestinian protests that you've seen.
Okay, so these are from, and by the way, Sabby Sabs does her homework. She is an intelligent individual. Whether you agree with her or not has nothing to do with it. She's an intelligent individual who does her research, does her homework. I have no reason to doubt anything that she's presenting to the public, any information that she is providing. I take her at her word when she says these organizations, The Answer and PSL, that they are responsible for a large number of pro-Hamas protests across this nation, which are often violent and very often result in property destruction, like at the University of Washington, where they tried to burn down a $100 building paid for by taxpayers at the University of Washington because pro-Hamas. Or the protests in New York, in Columbia, where buildings were taken over by mask-wearing pro-Hamas protesters that were running through, threatening students, disrupting everyone's ability to pay for their $60,000 education at these institutions. Yeah, same organization was helping to enable those individuals over at Harvard, Binghamton University, UCLA, Cornell University. Yeah, colleges across this nation are all supported, trained, funded by these organizations. I have no doubt Sabby Sabs is very aware of that. She did her homework. So now you know who's partially responsible. By the way, who is funding the PSL? Who is funding The Answer? Who's behind those groups? Where's their money coming from? You may be surprised about that. Let's go on.
The first protest in D.C. after October 7th that had over 500,000 people, that was PSL.
So after the greatest single event of terrorism to the nation of Israel since World War II, they saw that happen. They saw Hamas come out and kill 1,200 or more people, civilians, without warning, just walked on in and just killed women and children and men, all of them civilians, just killed them randomly. Took 256 of these individuals from 50 countries around the world, took 256 of them hostage, tortured them, sexually abused them as per the UN confirmation in December of 2023. They sexually abused and tortured these hostages on a daily basis. That includes 22 Americans. That's besides the 34 Americans that Hamas, all of them civilians, killed them all. And then there was 22 more Americans that were taken hostage, each and every one of them civilians. Oh, well, not each, most of them being civilians. Took them all, tortured them, sexually abused them for 582 days, except for the 17 that Hamas killed in cold blood, including last year, October, when one of those individuals was about to be rescued by the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF. 6 minutes before that American could be rescued from being a hostage and tortured by Hamas, a terrorist organization, Hamas shot the American in the head to make sure he was dead, to spite the Israelis and America, rather than let him go home to his family. The kid was 22. Killed him in cold blood after having him a hostage. 582 days. We just got the last hostage back. The last living hostage. 17 killed. And the day after this all started, by Hamas, the terrorist organization, in an act of terror almost equal to 9/11, the PSL said, let's get 500 people who like terrorism, who believe in genocide, like the former president of Harvard, Professor Gray, just like her, who are happy with genocide as long as it's by the right people against the wrong people. Let's get 500,000 of them together in D.C. and say, we support terrorism. Yeah, that sounds great. Doesn't that sound good for America and the world? Go on.
And Answer Coalition. They are known for being able to turn out big numbers, right? They have buses that goes to different cities.
Who pays for those buses? Who's funding these organizations? That's the question I'd like to have an answer to. Who's funding the Answer Coalition? Who's funding the PSL? Because these aren't household names. These aren't organizations that everyone knows. They're not getting money from Act Blue like most Democrats do. And they don't have a PAC, whether you agree with IPAC or not, AIPAC, whether you agree with them or not. We at least know they exist. We at least have transparent numbers. We know the money's going in, and we know it's going to various members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans alike. At least we have the transparency there. We can track most of the money coming from George Soros to a lot of these organizations. Who's funding the PSL? Who's funding the Answer Coalition so that they can bus in people on demand to respond to acts of terrorism and say, it's great, we should support that. Okay, let's go on.
To pick people up to take them to protests in DC. So they have more resources. They have a good amount of funding. I would say if they can do these things, like they're not like, just some grassroots organization that just has small dollar donations.
So they're a corporate organization. They're corporate. So there's a structure to these. And what she's not also addressing is, what do they do besides bus people in? How do they get these people? How do they find these people? What are they doing in meetings? Obviously, they must coordinate with these people. Are they just paying them and say, show up? Are they just people who are on demand? We need 50 people. Jump on a bus. It's going to be there on Monday at 10 p.m. Jump on the bus. We'll pay you X amount of dollars per day. Don't worry. Just protest. Just follow the leader. Is that what they do? I doubt it. So that means there's some reason why people are part of this group. Why was Elias Rodriguez part of this group? Because there's something in their messaging. There's something in their organization that is giving him a reason to be with them for God knows how long he was there. We don't know. He could have been connected to them for, 10 years. Could have been 5 years. Could have been 1 year. I don't know. How long? What is their messaging? What are they doing? These are questions we should have asked about these groups. But she's like, no, but these are good groups. Sabby Sabs is trying to give you the reason. See, they're good. They're trustworthy. You can trust the Answer Coalition. You can trust the PSL because they're big. That's not a reason. They're organized. That's not a reason to trust them. Oh, but they support terrorism. That's absolutely not a reason to trust them. What's going on?
They have good backing and good funding, right?
That doesn't mean that they're good. Just because they have solid, and I think the word she should be using is solid funding and consistent backing, but that's not the same thing as good. She uses the word good, whether she realizes it or not, could be subconscious. She's trying to imply that what they do is a positive thing, that they're beneficial organizations. So she uses the word good when she should be saying consistent or solid in terms of their funding. Doesn't mean that the funding is good. That doesn't mean that the organization is good. They can be very well organized and be bad. The Germans in the 1930s were incredibly well organized and funded and backed. But no one says that they were good. They're not a good organization. So to say they have good funding doesn't mean they're good. To say they have good or solid backing doesn't mean they're good or that they represent anything positive. And if they support terrorism, if they support Hamas, in my opinion, they are not a good organization. Again, this is irregardless of whether or not you think Israel is a good guy or a bad guy in the current iteration of the conflict. Whether you like or dislike Israel, I think Israel, yes, they are justified in most in what they have done. Have they gone overboard at some points? Absolutely. But, overall, I'm with them. Why? Because you have a genocidal government right next door to you that has sworn and is actively trying to kill you for merely existing. I got a lot of leeway for that. I don't have a lot of sympathy for terrorists. Others may. That's fine. You may not agree with Israel. That's okay. That still doesn't justify trying to kill people, to kill random individuals, both civilians and low-ranking members of embassies. Not the same. And the PSL is attached to that. As much as they want to say, oh, we had nothing to do with it. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Going on.
Don't you think it's kind of strange that the person who did the shooting just happened to have been connected with PSL, the organization that was responsible for having those massive pro-Palestinian protests across the country?
No, I don't think it's strange.
Do you think that's just a little convenient?
No, I think that's exactly what we would expect. I think that is a logical consequence, and that's the part I wanted you to see. She thinks, well, this has to be a setup. This is a false flag, because it doesn't make sense that an organization whose whole purpose, or one of its purpose, is to support socialism, to support terrorism, that is willing to support genocide and giant genocidal organizations, that they have members who are willing to commit murder. That is completely logical to me. It seems like a direct consequence. And again, what are they training these people to do? They're backing them. They are supporting them to do what? Because we see leftist protest after leftist protest results in violence almost every single time. I believe 538, the organization 538, did a study on this, and I believe it's somewhere around 50%, might have been, it was either 38 or 50% of every leftist protest is violent. Every single one. Now, this is back in 2022, and I'm remembering this off of memory right this second, so I could be slightly off on the numbers. But we're not talking like 5% or 10%. We're talking about fully a third to a half of all the leftist protests are violent. And now you may say, well, Mike, but that was 2020, 21, 22. Things were a lot more violent then. Okay, let's ratchet the numbers down by half. You're still talking about 15, 20% of every leftist protest are violent. And when I say violent, just in the last 2 weeks, alone, you saw that the same leftist pro-Hamas terrorist supporting organizations that the PSL supports and helps to organize went into Columbia College threatening students and trying to occupy buildings and destroying property. In the last 2 weeks in the University of Washington, the same type of students, perhaps even the same individuals that are trained by PSL and the Answer Coalition, went into the University of Washington, took over one of the buildings and tried to set fire, an arson of a $100 million building, and created havoc, complete chaos on that campus, and threatened the lives of those students, put them in fear for their life. So if that's what this group is helping to fund and helping to create, to allow to exist, these kind of riots, these kinds of crimes, this violence, when you tell me, well, one of their members, former members, maybe current member, whatever, a member of theirs went out and killed people, yeah, I think that is very, very logical. That is a direct consequence. It's the dominoes continuing to fall. Of course their people would do that. Why wouldn't they? It seems to be what they're there for. That this is the kind of culture they are cultivating. Obey and do what we feel when we feel it, or else one of our members is going to lose their mind and go out and attack you and try to kill you, because how dare you not obey? How dare you have a different feeling, a different thinking than what they have already decided? This is very much like the authoritarianism of what we see in the DNC ramped up to the next level. This is the next step. It's the same thing that we're seeing in the Democratic National Committee at this moment. Democrats are doing it. You're going to accept Kamala Harris. Why? Because they said so. There's not going to be a primary against Joe Biden because they said so. Bernie Sanders is out and Hillary Clinton is in because they said so. Hillary Clinton's out and Obama is in because they said so. It's not about whether you chose them or not. It has nothing to do with you. You don't have a choice in that. You're just going to obey. That's it. That's your only choice. And what's the next level after that? Now not only are they deciding who you're going to vote for, and how dare you be black? How dare you be a woman and not vote Democrat? How could you possibly do that? You don't have the right to not vote Democrat. You're black. You know, as Joe Biden told you, if you're not black if you don't vote Democrat. When did he get that right? When did that become a law? When was that put in with the 15th Amendment, the 14th Amendment? When did they put that in and say, oh, by the way, you're going to vote Democrat for the rest of your life? You have no choice in this. When did that ever happen? According to these people, that's what's supposed to happen. In fact, they're the next step forward. Not only are you going to vote the way they tell you to, now you're going to get rid of the Constitution and all those rights that people died for, people bled for, that we have this holiday for. Yeah, everything that they stood for, all those black people in the Civil War, all those black people in every conflict America has ever had, yeah, they died for nothing because these guys say, well, none of those rights matter. Everything they fought for, all of the freedoms that they fought for, nothing. And I had this argument recently. I was part of the chat in Larry Sharp has a program. Yesterday was his AMA, Ask Me Anything. And I was having a chat with someone and we were talking, it was about race. And someone said, but Mike, you got to understand, you're black. I'm like, what the hell is that supposed to mean? And, well, America's racist. You know, black people are downtrodden. They have no rights. They have no freedoms. Well, first of all, it's been over 120 days of Trump. Guess what? I can still vote. And I can vote for anyone that I want to. Women are not chained to the kitchen. They're still working jobs. They still own businesses. No one has been stopped from doing a damn thing that they want to do as American citizens. You can say, oh, well, what about those foreigners who have their visas revoked? They're foreigners. They're not American citizens. That's a different argument. What about the illegal aliens being mass deported? Those are criminals from other countries. They're not American citizens. It's not the same thing. So you can't tell me that. And American, by the way, black people in America, you're not downtrodden. You may not be perfect. Life is not, I'm not going to say it's perfect, but I can tell you what, the richest, most successful, with the most opportunity in the world of all black people in the world are in America. That's a fact. We have the highest quality of living in the world. We have the most opportunity for advancement in the world. We have the best, you name it, in the world. The most rights, the most freedoms in the world are in America. If being black in America is being, I don't know, a serf, being a second-class citizen, then black people in the rest of the world don't exist. They have no life whatsoever. There is that much of a chasm between America and the rest of the world. Go to Angola and see if you can do what you do here in America and you're black. You can't. You can't. It's not even a question. It's not even a choice. It's not an option. This is why we have so many people from Angola, from Botswana, from Chad, Nigeria, that are trying to come into America illegally. Because even as an illegal alien, the quality of their life is superior to their life as citizens in their home country. They have more rights, they have more freedoms, they have a better quality of life. Even as second-class citizens, criminals in America hiding in the shadows, and they have a better quality of life. There is no black person in America, well, virtually no black person in America, that has less opportunity than anywhere else in the world. That is a fact. So that's not an excuse. Also, not an excuse. It's something the left wants you to think, but it's not real. It's not a fact. The exact opposite is the truth. But when you are in the bubble of the progressive mindset, when you have been indoctrinated by schools and Hollywood and television and politics to believe these things, that's your world. And so when someone says, oh no, but there is no factual basis to what you're saying, I understand that's how you feel, and you can feel whatever way you want, but there's no logical, consistent, substantive reason for what you're saying. They lose their minds. And that's when we get the violence. When someone challenges their worldview and says, no, it doesn't make sense, I don't agree with you, then their answer is be violent. They either dismiss and discredit you, and that's just your regular Democrat will just dismiss and discredit you. You just don't understand. You just don't get it. And then if you ask them, well, then educate me. What don't I understand? I'm not going to waste my time. Yeah, that's their answer every time. You're so beneath me. You're not intelligent enough to understand. Really? I mean, we got a taste of it for those who came in late. Look at the beginning of the show. Look in the chat. We had a gentleman, Chris, who came out and said, but Mike, you're talking nonsense. Really? And when I asked, Chris, tell me where what I said was nonsensical. Tell me how the evidence I provided isn't factual. Explain to me why you don't see the conclusion. You may not agree with the conclusion, perfectly fine, but how is it that you don't see the logic in what I have put before you? No answer. Zero answer. Oh, well, you're just nonsense. Really? And so Sabby is trying to justify this. She's trying to put the question in your head because it has to exist in her head because she believes in progressivism. She believes in socialism to some degree. And she's saying, well, it can't be that the policies and the principles that are being put forth by Answer Coalition, by PSL, by their socialist ideology, that can't be the reason why people are committing cold-blooded murder. It has to be something else. This can't be real. It has to be government intervention. It can't be the policies because the policies are good because she believes them. She believes in it. She thinks it's worthwhile. And her worldview would be crushed if she's wrong. Everything she believes suddenly has to change. And that's the problem with the left. They have been indoctrinated, and this is their world. This is their world blue. That's why Blue Sky exists, because they can't deal with reality. They can't deal with the fact that others do not agree, and the world does not agree with the way they want to see the world, that their feelings aren't the center of the universe, and the universe does not spin around however they feel at any given minute, because they've been taught and trained that it should, and that socialism will be the beautiful utopia where their feelings will be repeated by everyone. Everyone's going to have the same exact feeling every single moment of every single day, and everyone is a superstar at every single moment of every single day, and that's just not reality. It's not even close. Again, let me say, I'm not making a personal attack against Sabby Sabs. I respect her. I respect what she does. I respect that she does her homework. I respect that she does a lot of research. But in this case in particular, I disagree with her. I think it is very obvious that this is the logical consequence of what PSL and Answer Coalition, what the far left do. This is what we should and do expect from them, because that is what we have seen historically, consistently. This is what they bring about. Violence and terrorism and coercion by force. They thrive on it. They could not have, their movements would not get attention were it not for that. If they weren't blocking off entire roadways, highways, stopping ambulances, stopping fire trucks from being able to help save people's lives, if they weren't blocking off the ability of people to live their lives, to go to work and get paid, we wouldn't be paying attention to them. If they weren't out there trying to take over buildings and trying to commit arson to police stations that are there to protect the public, if they weren't doing things like that, and that's the defenders of the Atlanta forest, who are trying to burn down in Atlanta, they're trying to burn down police stations that are only there to try and help the community, to make the people safe. And they would rather have anarchy and gangs running rampant, running wild, criminals without any accountability. So they try and commit arson because they have a feeling. And you have to respect their feeling. You have to live their feeling. Doesn't matter who you are or what feeling you have. If you have a feeling that's different than theirs, they are willing to be as violent as it takes to change your mind, to change your life. That is dangerous. That is beyond authoritarian. That is the worst thing that could happen to America. Sabby Sabs and I have absolutely diametrically different points of view on this. And I respect she has a viewpoint. I respect why she believes what she believes. I think she is far too much in a bubble to understand the consequences of what she believes. I'm not telling her to change the way she thinks. I'm telling her to consider the consequences. Like in this case, as she just asked, is that a coincidence? No, it's a direct consequence. It's not a coincidence. It is expected. It is the logical outcome of what these groups do and what we have seen them doing consistently for years. Sabby Sabs and me say, oh my God, but you just don't understand, Mike. Now, to be fair, Sabby Sabs isn't that type. She's not going to go, Mike, you don't understand. She would instead, as best as I understand from her coverage, and I'm not consistently following it, to be fair, I think she would be more likely to say, no, let me explain why I believe this. I think you don't know. You don't have the knowledge that she has about this, that, and the other. That's what I would expect from her because she's an intelligent woman. She makes good arguments. I've seen some of her programming where she makes good arguments about things. Sometimes I agree with her. Rarely, but sometimes. So I'm not saying she's the type to go, oh, you just don't understand. No. But I think the rank and file members of PSL, the rank and file members of the Answer Coalition, members of Antifa and BLM, yeah, they're the ones who were more than happy to go, yeah, you just don't understand. They don't understand it any better. They can't explain it. I know this. And call it anecdotal if you wish, but in my experience personally at these protests throughout central New York, in my experience in covering these events and decades of watching these events from around the country, yeah, Sabby Sabs may have a reasoning and an understanding and a logic to why she says some of the things she says. The rank and file don't. They just know this is what we were told. They were indoctrinated. That's all they have is the parroting of the bullet point that was given to them. And they were told, if you want a better life, you have to obey. You just have to obey. And they do. And they expect everyone else to do it too. Because they're told their life would be better if everyone obeys. So how dare you? How dare you not obey? And Sabby's here going, but it sounds like it's a setup. It has to be a setup. This guy, Elias Rodriguez, he's just been a sleeper agent for a decade, for at least 7 years. He's not a real progressive. She goes on to say, he's not a real progressive. He's probably a plant by the federal government. That's why he murdered 2 people in cold blood. Her reasoning for that is, well, he didn't run away. Why would he run away? He's proud. A lot of these activists are proud of what they do. They're happy to try and commit arson, to try and burn down buildings, to try and threaten other individuals, to force them to believe what they feel at any given moment. There's a lot of pride and joy in groups like the Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, in terms of groups like BLM and Antifa. They have been convinced, they have been told and reassured that they're on the right side of history. Why wouldn't they be proud of the crimes that they commit? Of course they're proud. Of course they would stay at the crime scene and say, yeah, I committed that crime. I did it. Aren't I a hero? Am I not going to be celebrated? Look at George Floyd. He's getting celebrated. He was a violent criminal his entire adult life. He made all the wrong choices. every step of the way. A violent felon, a drug dealer, a violent criminal, up until the moment he died. Did he deserve to die the way he did? Maybe, but it is a direct consequence of his life that he died that way. And as someone who grew up in the Bronx, and I remember the crack epidemic, I've known drug dealers. I had guys who were dealing drugs back in high school with me that I grew up with. Ordain Williams in particular, just for one name, who is dead. Ordain died in high school while wearing a bulletproof vest doing a drug deal about a mile and a half from where I live in the Bronx right now. Mile and a half away. Doing a drug deal in high school, shot dead through a bulletproof vest. Why? Because Ordain was a drug dealer. Ordain was a bad guy. He was a criminal. I grew up with him. Knew him from kindergarten. Was Ordain a bad guy to me? No. To me, he was just Ordain. I mean, I knew him all his life. I knew his criminality. We all did. All of us that grew up together. Am I surprised that Ordain died as a result of his criminality of being a drug dealer? No. A bunch of our friends died or went to jail because they were criminals. I know a bunch of guys. I know the guys who robbed Archie Bunker's car. This is old. No one's going to remember this except people older like myself. This is back in the 80s when Carol O'Connor, who played Archie Bunker, he was in Manhattan. He was at an event and somebody stole his car, and it happened to be people that I knew, people I grew up with. I know exactly who it was. I know who did it. I know when they did it. I know what weapons they were using. I know why they ran away. I know where they ran away to. Yeah, okay, that's life. Not everyone we know is an angel. Not everyone is a saint. They made choices. And you know what? A lot of those guys, they went to jail. Not that they were bad people, to me at least, but they weren't good people, at least at that point in their life. Some of them have since turned their lives around, but they weren't all good people. They weren't all saints. They were doing bad things, and they had bad consequences, and some of them died because of it. So you can't tell me that PSL, the Answer Coalition, and varying degrees the far left, that they're all innocent. How could this happen? It can't be because of what we've been teaching people, what we have been training people to do, that we have been organizing and pumping into these people's heads. It can't be that. It had to be the government. It had to be a setup, because no one on the left would go out and burn down restaurants and buildings. They wouldn't do that, except they do on a regular basis for years, over and over again. No, Sabby, I am completely convinced, yes, this is a natural consequence of the PSL and the Answer Coalition. Yes, it is something that we should all expect. It is an obvious thing. It has nothing. I truly think you are reaching for the sky to try and connect a government infiltration. You know, oh my God, it's like the Black Panthers. The federal government investigated them. Am I saying that there's no federal agents in those far left organizations? There probably is. And thank God there is, because those other organizations are extremely violent and they condone and support and encourage violence. So I want federal agents there to stop the worst of it. And they don't. I wish they did. Maybe there are worse things that could have been happening that we don't know about because the government has stopped it. Maybe. But I don't think the government's the cause of this. And I don't think the government said, hey, you know what? How can we get this one guy? We can make the PSL look bad. We can make Chicago far left organizations, make them look bad. Let's just kill a couple of people, innocent people, members of the Israeli embassy. Let's kill a foreign government and worsen the U.S. diplomatic relations with that country, let's just kill their members. Yeah, let's do that. Well, I mean, what could possibly happen? It's not like the United States is in the middle of negotiations with Iran and Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Israel about Middle East peace. And, why not kill one of the Israelis and see if that, doesn't mess up the process? It's stupid. That makes no sense. It's not logical at all. Especially when I'm using Occam's razor here. The simplest answer is almost always the true answer. Simple answer. PSL and the Answer Coalition fund and train individuals to commit riots and acts of violence. Is it strange that their indoctrination, their training, would lead to some nut job going out and killing people in cold blood for the cause? Yes, it is completely logical. It is probable. Not only is it logical, it's probable that will happen multiple times. And it has happened multiple times across this country for years. Not in the single digits, but in dozens of cases per year across this country. So why would I be surprised by this one? Not everyone's going to agree with me. And Sabby Sabs has every right, whether in a video of her own, or if she would like, I'll come on to her program, she can come on to mine, either way, and she can rebut anything I've said. And again, that's not the full context of her entire video. She has a video that's 42 minutes long. We looked at about 2.5 minutes, but that part I felt was highly egregious. I found that to be absolutely mind-blowingly wrong. And I had to point it out. I had to bring that up. That she's wrong. It is absolutely logical. And no, I don't think it's the government. I don't think it's the Trump administration or the government in general. It wasn't the CIA or the FBI. No, it's the left. Because this is what the left does. And we should call that out for what it is. Elias Rodriguez, if he committed the murders, as we believe and seems to be by every bit of evidence available at this moment, he committed this, death penalty. I have no problem with that. Give him the death penalty. If it is correct that Joseph Neumeyer was trying to burn down a United States embassy overseas, jail. Absolutely. Congresswoman McIver, who assaulted law enforcement, jail. And Newark Mayor Ross Baraka, who was illegally trespassing for a gimmick for his election as hopefully for him hoping to be New Jersey governor, should go to jail. Adam Schiff, who appears to have committed the same kind of mortgage fraud that Letitia James has done, they both send him to jail. Judge Dugan, who broke the law and helped a criminal escape from the law, aided and abetted the escape of a criminal from law enforcement, she goes to jail. It's that simple. And I know there's a lot of people in the left that are going, but Mike, you just don't understand. I do. I want them charged for the crimes and go to trial for these crimes. And if they are found guilty, to suffer the consequences. Because being elected, being a leftist, a socialist, does not absolve them. Feeling like they're on the right side of history does not absolve them. Being a socialist, thinking that socialism is a great idea, does not absolve you of the crimes of violence that they are committing. I'm just really upset with people who are trying to justify this violence, not just the rhetoric, but the actions of these psychopaths. And I'm tired of them saying, but they're justified. They have a reason. They have a right. No, they don't. Not in America. You want to tell me, they're in China. Different country, different rules, different world. Oh, but they're in North Korea, they're in Taiwan, or they're in Thailand, Laos, they're over in Chile, or somewhere in Moldova. Different countries, different laws, different scenario altogether. We're talking about Americans, what's happening in America, and what Americans with this ideology, this brainwashing, what they're doing in other countries. And you can say, but America's not they're not good guys. They've done some bad things. Totally separate thing. Totally separate thing. And if you want to argue about the American government and its involvement in various foreign policy, we can have that discussion. That doesn't justify go kill those people. Go burn down that building. Go torch those Teslas. Destroy someone else's property, their livelihood. Yeah. Burn down the Tesla car lot. No, you don't get that right. Not in America. You don't have that right. You want to tell me another country, maybe that's legal? Maybe. That's a different country. I don't live in that country. I'm not a citizen of that other country. I'm a citizen in America. And you can love socialism all you want. You can be a self-avowed communist if you want to be. And I'm not saying that Sabby Sabs is or is not. That's not what I mean. I'm talking about in general. You can have those ideas, but that doesn't mean you get to commit violence. Doesn't mean that just because you want to win political points, you get to break the law because you're an elected official. I would say that about Republicans, and I have. And I would say that about Democrats, and I have. And I will say that about progressives, and I have. Again, I'm not trying to mischaracterize Sabby Sabs, and I don't think I have. If I'm wrong, Sabby, you can contact me publicly or privately and tell me if I have. If you want to have a conversation about this, I'm more than happy to go onto your program. You can come onto my program. We can discuss it in detail and tell me if I'm wrong. I'll tell you why I think I'm right. I'm more than willing to have the conversation. I'm not here to attack you. I'm attacking the ideology. I'm attacking the consequences of that ideology. I'm attacking the bubble that insulates people and allows them to say, well, no, it's not really their fault. Yes, it is. Elias Rodriguez made a choice. Joseph Neumeier made a choice. Representative McIver, Mayor Baraka, they made choices. BLM, Antifa, the people who are breaking the pro-Hamas movement at the University of Washington, at Columbia, at Harvard, at Cornell, they've made choices. They made decisions. And they need to be held accountable for them. No excuses, no justification. They made choices. They need to be held accountable. Let's stop trying to use kid gloves on lethal intent.